Hey everyone, and welcome to the 10th episode of the Business of Sport show. We've had some fantastic guests on in here so far, and today it carries on rolling with none other than Derek Redmond, a British Olympic legend. So Derek, thank you for being on the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
For all the people that may not recognize the name, introduce yourself.
So yes, my name's Derek Redmond, former British European Commonwealth world champion. Competed for Britain, I don't know how many times. Also played basketball for England and professionally, played rugby professionally and just missed up on a call out for that for England. Been also national champion. I've had a motorcycle race team, we were national champions, and I've been national champion for kickboxing. And at the moment, at the tender age of 55, I'm a semi-pro boxer. So I think that wraps it all up into one.
So you haven't done a lot then?
No, not much at all. I've been a bit lazy.
Well, saying that, let's take a look at you in action in the 1991 World Championships.
The wind freshening as they get away, and Roger Black in lane number 3 goes straight away, closes right down on the Jamaican. The American Valmont has started fast as well. Into the back straight though, it's Black at this stage who's cut right back on the Jamaican Pat O'Connor. Also going well is Valmont of America, and right on the outside, Kater of Kenya. The first leg run in lanes, and the first bend of the second leg, and then they can break. The stagger and winds, we'll begin to see how they sort it out. But the important point is the breaking point on the second leg at the beginning of the back straight. Black has done a good one, but so too has Valmont. But Black on the inside is closing him down all the time. And the handoff point, well, it's very close between America and Great Britain, but I think Great Britain have just got the edge. Derek Redmond now, the UK record holder from Birchfield on the second leg. Quincy Watts going for America. Black 44.6 on the first leg, that's some run. And Britain got the lead they wanted. They've now got to start increasing it because they've got to give Akabusi a healthy start on the anchor leg. Derek Redmond being chased by the teenage Quincy Watts and caught by the American. But has Redmond saved something? Battling down the straight. It's a brilliant leg by the American youngster. Quincy Watts has got America right back in, and has the British gamble failed? John Reid is on the third leg, and he's chasing Danny Everett. The time for Redmond, 44.1, so Watts run a stormer. John Regis, inexperienced at this distance, right behind the World Championship bronze medalist. Everett. When will Regis attack? Has he got the ability to attack? A seasoned 400-meter runner. Regis comparatively inexperienced. And Everett stretching slightly away. Regis comes wide to have a go. And Regis can't quite get there. America will take over in the lead with their world champion pedigree on the anchor leg. Akabusi goes after him. The difference is 3 meters. Now Akabusi has got to sit there and wait and make a late attack if he can. But he's up against the man who is the world champion. The race between the two of them, and the leg by Regis, 44.3. And still Akabusi waits. Pettigrew with goal behind him in the individual event. Akabusi, bronze in the 400 hurdles. Here he goes. This is the important point. Can Akabusi do it? Akabusi has a go, and the American is beaten. And he's fighting back. Akabusi has made it. Akabusi, gold for Britain. America second, and Jamaica third.
Right, watching that clip, it's an absolute nail biter. I mean, that was super, super close.
Yeah.
How did it feel? Because that was the first time a British team has won that relay since, was it 1936 in the Berlin Games, wasn't it? So that's got to be one hell of an achievement.
It was. I mean, it was great. I mean, obviously the backstory to that is we changed the order of the team the night before the race. And when I said we, it was the relay squad. The team management and the coach had picked a specific order, which was kind of the standard rule of thumb of fastest man last, second fastest man first, and the other two in the middle. So it was going to be me to Christian John to Roger. And to cut a very long story short, we had a discussion the night before. We just didn't feel that was the right order, and we felt the order needed to be changed. Chris felt he was in the shape of his life, and he was the man to run the last leg. And he kind of not half-heartedly, half in jest, said, "Listen, guys, you give me that relay baton either 10 meters or more up on the American, or no more than 10 meters down on the American, and I'll bring us a gold medal." And that kind of changed things, because we thought we might not get 10 meters plus up on the Americans, but we knew we could get Chris that baton well within 10 meters of the American on the last leg. So then that kind of gave us another question, right? If we put Chris in that position, how can we put Chris in that position? And that was what we discussed and worked out, of changing the order and putting Roger on the first leg, me on the second leg, and John on the third leg. And as you saw in the race just now, by the time John handed the baton to Chris, Chris was only a meter or meter and a half behind the American.
Yeah.
And it was kind of weird, because when Chris got that baton, I remember thinking, we've won. And he'd only taken 2 strides, because he got the baton where he said he wanted it to. And as the race unfolded, Chris did exactly what he needed to do. And for the first time in many, many years, an American team hadn't lost a world had lost a world or an Olympic title in a 4x4.
Absolutely amazing. And you've got to say that's a lot of confidence coming from Chris Akabusi, but he's never struck me as somebody that's lacked confidence.
Well, to be fair, yes. Chris was in the shape of his life. Chris is not one of these people to say something he doesn't mean, for a start, firstly. Secondly, we all had belief and faith in Chris as well. And we all had belief and faith in each other. So we knew as a foursome that we could get Chris, or as first of all, as a threesome, we could get Chris the baton where he wanted to. Chris knew he could do what he had to do. So as a team, we knew we could do it. And the weird thing was, we felt the easy part was getting the baton to Chris no more than 10 meters behind the American.
Yeah.
And the difficult bit was Chris doing his bit. Chris thought the hard bit was getting the baton no more than 10 meters, getting him the baton, and he thought his bit was easy. So we kind of took the pressure off of each other in a weird kind of way, because we all thought the other people's role was more difficult. So it was a weird scenario, weird feeling. We spent a lot of time together. We had a lot of belief, faith, and trust in each other, and we were confident enough that it could work.
And thankfully it did, because that's one hell of a race to watch. There wasn't a lot in it, and that kind of final bit. But again, it's a team effort, really, isn't it? Which is fantastic. So, how did you actually get into? We'll start with athletics before going through the rugby, the boxing, and everything else.
I joined my first club when I was 7 years of age. No real, exciting story about it. I suppose it's a good story in one respect, that I literally went from grassroots athletics to standing on top of a podium at the World Championships. I joined the club when I was 7 because I liked running and jumping, and my mum and dad thought it was safer to me and the house for me to run and jump on an athletics track and in an arena, rather than in the house and break either something in the house or break something on me. For the first, 4 or 5 years of my life, I actually thought my name was Will You Walk, because I just used to run and jump around everywhere. So it was just something that I wanted to do. I loved it. And I joined my first club, Milton Keynes Athletics Club, when I was 7 years old. Then when we moved to Northampton, I joined Northampton Phoenix by the time, I was 10, 11 or whenever it was, and just worked my way through the ranks. As I say, no real fancy story. It was just someone who loved the sport, enjoyed it, went in at grassroots, and lucky enough was good enough to be able to follow the athlete pathway, if you want to call it that took me to what it did.
Fantastic. Well, talk us through that kind of athlete's pathway then, because I've spoken to different people on this podcast about how they kind of got into it, how they progressed through, age grades and things like that. Talk me through that from an athletics point of view. What is that kind of pathway?
Well, for me, first and foremost, it was that, being in a club was the first thing. Contrary to a lot of people's belief, all the coaches, all the club and team managers and team secretaries, all that, they all do it out of love. They're not paid to do it. We're not talking Premiership football clubs or anything here. This is a lot of it is done on volunteers. You pay your subs every year, and when I say your subs, it might be £30 a year. We're not talking tens of thousands or thousands of pounds. And you just work. There's coaches that come down there, and in my early days, the coaches were just very keen parents that did a bit of coaching and had their grade 1, 2, 3 or whatever qualifying coaching badges. And they did it basically because one, they loved it, and one, they possibly had a son or daughter at the club, and two, they enjoyed it, so they came down and did a bit of coaching. And that's pretty much how it started. My very first coach was a guy called Mick Everett. His son used to run, and Mick was a bit of a runner himself and had his qualified, coach's badge, if you like, and did a bit of coaching for us youngsters, who were 7, 8, 9, 10 years of age, and we're full of enthusiasm, energy, and just want to get out and do it, but we've got no idea what we do and how to do it and all that sort of stuff. And these coaches stroke lion tamers kept us in place. As I got a bit older, same system, just a different club. Even when I was 12, 13, 14, 15, still running for my club, changed coaches because I'd moved. But again, my coach wasn't paid. He was now a county level coach, so a bit more experience and whatnot. And I guess for me, what was slightly different was when I was 15, because when I first joined, I did a bit of everything: high jump, long jump, triple jump, middle distance. And it didn't take very long, after joining my first athletics club, that I wasn't very good at high jump, long jump, middle distance, long distance, but I was pretty quick. So I stuck to sprinting. So for years, I ran the 100 and 200. And then when I moved clubs, I carried on with the 100 and 200. And then when I was 15, I was running a club meeting, and I ran the 100 and the 200 and finished third in both. And the guy who was supposed to run the 400 didn't show up. So the team manager was desperately trying to find someone to run it. I ran for my age group, obviously, because it's the competition is basically a league competition in its points based. So there's every age group, male and female, and every event, and A string and B string. So you've got the faster ones and not the so faster ones in every event in every age group. And what happens is it's the team that amasses the most points at the end of the day. So it's like 8 points for first, 1 point for eighth across the board. So even if you come last in your event, you get 1 point. So the main aim is not to miss an event. So the guy who was supposed to run the 400 didn't show up, and the team manager was desperate to find someone to run the 400. And for a joke, my dad said to me, "Why don't you run the 400? What have you got to lose besides another race? You got nothing to lose."
Great parental advice there.
it was meant as a joke, and it was said as a joke, and it was he wasn't being horrible or anything. And the point being, what did I have to lose? At worst, I lose a race, but everything to gain. So that was the point of it. And we laughed and joked about it. Anyway, I ran it and I won it. And I broke the county record for the 400 for my age group. And I quite like that feeling. And I ran 1, 2s and 4s for the rest of the season, because this was maybe 2/3 of the way through the season. And I ran 1, 2s and 4s for the rest of the season. And decided at the end of that year, I'm going to forget the 100s and 200s, because I don't think I won a 100 or a 200, but I won all my 400s. Kept on breaking my own county record, and I thought somebody's trying to tell me something here. And I decided that winter I was going to train for 400s and come out the following year as a 400-meter runner. And that's pretty much what I did. Then the following year, I would have been about now 16. I made it to the English schools, finished second in the English schools. And if you finish first or second in the English schools, you automatically get selected to run for England in a home international. So it's England versus Ireland versus Scotland versus Wales. Which I did, and that was my first junior international when I was 17. That was my England international when I was 17. I had my full junior international. I represented Great Britain as juniors, came fourth in the European Championships. When I was 18, the following year, I managed to make it to the Olympic trials at Crystal Palace. I didn't make the 84 games, but I finished 6th in the final of the trials, which made me really sit up and think there might be something here. And then when I was the following year, when in 85, when I was 19, that was it. My world changed. 27th of July, 1985, 11:45 p.m. ran in the Bislett Games. which is now part of the the Diamond League. In my time, it was called the Golden League. And it's my first ever Grand Prix big race. I think I got paid $900, and I thought I was the man. And I won it, broke the British record, and went from being ranked, I don't know, 6th or 7th in Great Britain to being ranked 5th in the world, all in one lap. And
crazy.
That's how it all went on. So it was just kind of a natural progression as things went on. And that's what I say, like a pathway, if you like. There wasn't anything particular. But I will say this, if it wasn't for the parents that volunteered at club level, then it would have been a much different story. All the officials and the parents. I mean, my dad even, when we used to go to an athletics meeting, my dad always used to make me laugh because, I remember one meeting, we used to go on, on the coach. So if our club was running in, I don't know, Nottingham, for argument's sake, we'd meet at our club, and I live in Northampton, so I just picked on Nottingham as an example. So we'd meet at our athletics club, jump on a coach, parents, everybody, athletes, and off we go to Nottingham. And we'd get there, and then, as we pull in the car park, the team manager would say to the parents, right, I need someone to help with the long jump, marking the long jump, the javelin, the shot put, this and that. So one day my dad put his hand up and said, yeah, I'll do the javelin. And at the end of the day, he goes, sod that for a game of soldiers. Those guys are throwing at 80, 90 meters. I got a bloody run with a tape measure, 80, 90 meters every time. So after that, he stuck to long jump and shot put because they weren't going any further than maybe 12 meters in the long jump and about 5, 6 meters in the long jump. So he said, I'm never doing the javelin again. He goes, I'm puffing away. He goes, I've done more mileage than you have this week. So, but that's what it was. Parents all kind of chipped in and helped in, and, the starters, the officials, everybody even from all different clubs, the parents would help. And that was the backbone of British athletics. If you speak to any athlete, they've all been through that. I'm sure it's the same in other sports.
I was going to say, I think that's the backbone of most sports, coming up through junior levels where parents get involved, whether it's even the simple things of, cooking a bit, fishing, sausage and chips after a game for people or something like that. It's the parents that get stuck in and have a real impact. And actually, I was on the last episode, I was speaking with Sean Fitzpatrick, and actually he said that he made reference to the parents and people like that, because they're the heroes. Absolutely. They're the people that you look up to, because they're the ones that give up their Sunday mornings or their evenings to help people. And I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens kind of when we emerge from COVID-19 and all this lockdown at the moment, because I was even thinking to myself last night of how do these things restart? Because there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be cautious about coming out of all this stuff and volunteering for crowded pitches and sports venues, so that the kids can run around and get into these things, and it's going to be interesting to kind of see
how it pans out. Absolutely. And Sean's right. These parents and volunteers, it actually was not only giving up their time, which they could have been spending time possibly with their family if they didn't have family members competing or whatever, but it also was at their own cost, because they had to travel to these venues. There was no, as I say, no one in my club paid expenses to any parents or coach. They did it because they loved it and they enjoyed the sport. And that's what they did. If you were lucky, as in some of the meetings when I got a little bit older, you'd be lucky if the officials were given a packed lunch, at a lunchtime, and a warm cheese and ham sandwich and a can of Coke and a packet of crisps or something, and maybe a banana in there or something. That was about as good as it got, so Sean's absolutely right. If it wasn't for those people, parents, helpers, supporters, volunteers, then the likes of certainly me and Sean and lots of top athletes, majority wouldn't have had it as easy as we did. And I'm not saying it was easy, but it certainly would have been made a hell of a lot more difficult had we not had those opportunities. And in some cases, it may have been nigh on impossible.
Yeah, and a lot of talent would have been lost without those opportunities. Now, you've mentioned your dad. we're going to come on to it.
Yeah.
The big clip that you've probably spoken about thousands and thousands and thousands of times, which is this week, last week, every week, probably every day ever since.
Yeah.
It was the 92 Olympics in Barcelona.
Yeah.
Now I read that you had a few injuries going into that and stuff, but let's take a look at that clip. I know I've said you've probably spoken about it a lot of times. Now that clip to me, whilst it's heartbreaking because you can see the anguish on your face of what happened, but it's one of those clips that it is heartwarming and massively inspirational, because just that whole feeling and your dad running onto the track and helping you around and just, I don't know, it sounds a bit bizarre, but that cool moment where one of the officials runs up to him and he just literally sticks his hand out and goes, no.
He said a bit more than no, but yeah.
I can imagine. But,
Yeah.
but it's just one of those things of got to finish the race, got to make it round and got to push forward. And I mean, you were the man in the middle. Talk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd had, as you said at the beginning, I'd had lots of injury problems leading up to that. I'd missed other major championships, in previous years. 4 years prior to that, at my first Olympics, I was kind of favourite for a bronze medal, and I snapped my Achilles warming up for the heat. So I
read that like 90 seconds or something before the actual.
It's a little bit longer than that. It was about 45 minutes. So I was on the warm-up track, getting ready to go onto the track. I had just doing my final preparations, a couple of runs, and then snapped my Achilles went. And that put pay to me even stepping into the arena in Seoul. So I'd been for all that, having had problems and operation leading up to that. So it made 1992 even more important. And, I was possibly more hungry than others, than some, for a medal. And I'd won the first 2 rounds. I'd had problems, as you say, leading up to it, got over those. The medical team out there was absolutely brilliant. One physio in particular, a guy called Mike Garmston. I mean, he worked around the clock on my Achilles, and he was absolutely brilliant in keeping me in shape. And won the first round, the heat. I was the fastest qualifier out of all the athletes. Second round, just as quick. Ran well within myself, and the semi-final to me was just as my dad would refer to it, was just a matter of time. That's all it was. It was just a matter of time. And that time would have been about 44 seconds, 44.2. And we knew I was going to qualify. There was no reason why I wouldn't, unless something weird happened. And guess what? Something weird happened. You know, and the start was great, going down the back straight, doing the first spot's great, down the back straight, then obviously the hamstring goes. And, you know, when I talk about this, I had a presentation this morning, and I said exactly the same thing. You know, to be a champion, and I'm sure from all the sporting greats that you've had on this show, not that I'm calling myself a great, but I'm sure you've had some sporting greats on it.
You're amongst them. Yeah.
Well, thank you. You know, they would all say the same thing, and that is, to be a champion, you've got to have two things working together and firing on all cylinders. And one of them is being physically in shape, which is kind of obvious. The other one is actually being mentally in shape. You know, and you can't perform successfully at that level without having both of those. You know, you can be mentally in shape, and if you're not physically in shape, it's kind of obvious. But likewise, if you're physically in shape, but you're not quite mentally in shape, that can also, you know, cause a problem. Anyway, I was very fortunate that, you know, mentally and physically, I was in great shape. I mean, you know, I felt so confident. You know, at that point, even before the first round, I actually felt it didn't matter what event I picked on at the Olympic Games, I would have won gold. That's how confident I was. You know, I could have synchronized swimming, badminton, diving, hockey, you name it. I felt I was good enough to win gold. But that's the kind of state that you know you get yourself into over a period of time. And it's not just me, I've so when it came to that semi-final and I actually went down, yes, I you know, for a few seconds I shouted a few choice words, which, you know, and
I can imagine.
Yeah, you know,
we all would have. Yeah.
Yes, and you know, I couldn't believe it was me. Why me? Oh God, what's going on? Blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. And that lasted for about 15 seconds or so, 20 seconds maximum, less than 20 seconds. And I remember sitting up on the track and looking to see where the athletes were, looking around to see where they are. And they had, by this time, they've got about 100, 120 meters to go. And the thought that went through my mind, now bearing in mind that I'm still physically in shape, and the thought that went through my mind was, if I get up now and start running, I will still catch them and qualify. And that's why I got up and started running. So I get up and I hobble, still thinking I'm going to catch them. I hobble 50 meters. I've been, a couple of the officials are trying to stop me, and I've brushed them aside, and I've got, you know, continue. And I've hobbled 50 meters. I'm now at the 200 meter mark, still mentally in shape, as I refer to it. And I then look across to see how much I was gaining on these guys, because, you know, I'm thinking I'm catching these guys now. And it was an empty track. They've obviously finished, been interviewed, had a shower, their hair's dry, you know, it's completely over. And if you like, that's when the mental side caught up with the physical side, and reality then kind of hit in. And I decided, and that's when, if you like, the emotion started, because up until then I was on autopilot from being, you know, mentally in shape. And that's when it really started to sink in. And I made a decision that I want to finish this race, if it's the last race I ever run. And the reason I wanted to finish it, because I didn't want to be beaten by the Olympic Games. I felt that I could live with finishing 8th in the semi-final and getting knocked out, but I couldn't live with not finishing at all and quitting on something that I started to do. And I felt it was the only way I could live with the rest of my life, knowing that at least I finished the race and I could, as I say, live with 8th place, got knocked out. And I continued hobbling around, and the last thing I expected with 100 meters to go was to see my old man on the track. And I remember, as I say, in all of this, there were a few officials trying to stop me, doctors trying to get me to come off the track and get on a stretcher, and all this sort of stuff, and I wasn't having it. And I could sense my dad coming towards me from my left shoulder, and I could just see him out of the corner of my eye, not recognizing it was my dad at this stage. It was just another body, as far as I was concerned, coming to stop me. And I was just about to fend this person off, and I heard the distinct sound of my dad's voice. And if you ever hear him speak, he basically sounds like Barry White. You know, he's got the deepest voice you would ever want to hear. And I just heard him say, "Derek, it's me. You don't need to do this." And I remember saying, "Just get me back into lane 5. I'm going to finish this." race, and I'm effing and jeffing at my dad and swearing and shouting. And I will say on record, it's the only time I've ever been able to shout and swear at my dad and get away with it. I mean, I would never, ever even consider doing that before. But obviously I'm caught up in all the emotions and everything. And my dad said, okay, we'll finish together. Don't worry, we'll finish together. You know, and, you know, he sort of got me from a hobble to a walk. Now, his aim when he first came on the track was to stop me completely, because we all knew it was a hamstring injury. It was an obvious thing because he was sitting next to my coach at the 200-meter mark, quite high up. And we knew it was a hamstring problem. And his thought process was, we've still got the relay to come. This could be a bad case of cramp. It could be a slight strain. You know, we don't know how bad it is. And if he continues to run on it, he could be making it worse. So I want to stop him from doing it, because we still might be able to salvage something and get a second bite at the cherry at winning an Olympic medal. But he could obviously see that I wanted to finish. And in an interview, he actually says, you know, I wanted to stop him and Derek wanted to finish. And when he said he wanted to finish, that wasn't the place to have a family argument. So I complied with his wishes. That was what he said. And, you know, we finished the race together. And, you know, and when he sort of came onto the track, I guess because it was someone very close and very familiar to me, that's when I completely lost it and you know, and completely broke down. And that was pretty much that. But we had no idea. I had no idea it was going to have the effect on people around the world that it did. You know, I guess it could have gone one of two ways. You know, what a complete idiot, or wow, you know, what a courageous thing to do. And lucky for me, it was the latter. And you know,
I think it was always going to go down as that, because it is, you know, I think everybody can feel the pain of something you've worked towards for 4 years, the pinnacle of the sport, and then in an instant, in a click of a fingers, it's gone. But the fact of that perseverance to finish and that determination, you know, it is inspirational. Absolutely.
I get that now. 30 years
at the time, yeah.
You know, but at the time I felt I'd failed, you know, because, you know, my aim was to win an Olympic medal. I thought I was in the right shape too. I would have bet my bottom dollar I would have won an Olympic medal. You know, I was going for gold, obviously, but realistically, I think, you know, it's hard to say. You just don't know. But I think the silver would have been the medal. But we'll never know. That's just my own feelings about things. But yeah, I mean, for a long while, I felt that I'd failed. So I didn't see, certainly for 2-3 years, I couldn't see what people saw in it, because in my eyes, they were celebrating failure. And, you know, coming from a sporting point of view, you don't celebrate failure. You know, you deal with it, you learn from it, but you move on and hopefully turn that failure, learn from it, and turn that failure into some form of victory. So I really found it difficult to understand what people saw in it for a while. And you know, for the first 2-3 years, I found it difficult to talk about. Everybody and their mother wanted to talk about it, but I found it really difficult to, you know, and I was receiving emails and letters, and we're talking thousands of emails and letters from people. And I still get comments, emails, you know, on social media, and goodness knows what, not so much letters these days, but people were sending me medals that they'd won at school, saying you deserve this more than I do, from all over the world, not just in this country. I never ever cashed one, but people were sending me checks for $50, $100, saying, you know, you deserve this, blah blah blah. And you know, people were just doing some crazy, wonderful things. And I didn't get it for a while, and then I don't know what made me change, or I guess maybe just time. Something you learn to live with. I could begin to see what it was. It could have been when I had my own kids. You know, because one of the things I didn't recognize at the time, which I do recognize now being a father, is one of the biggest things from that is the fact that the person that came on to help me was my dad. Had it been my coach, had it been another teammate, had it been a team official, it wouldn't have had the same impact as it was of being my old man. And it kind of typifies the relationship we have and had as father and son during my career, because he was always there. You know, he was my number one fan, number one critic. everyone used to think he was my coach because he was always there with my coach. He was like security, he'd be lurking in the background, making sure there was no problems. And, literally, if someone said, "Excuse me, Derek, you do it, Redmond," my old man would be like, "Who wants to know?" And he'll be in there, and he was everything. And he was my gopher. If I needed something, he'd go and get lane assignments. He'd go and get the list of the athlete, anything I wanted. He was always there at major championships, and he was my shoulder to cry on, a person to laugh with. He would always, give me his thoughts and his advice. And he was very successful in business. He's now retired. So he would always put a bit of a business spin on things for me, even as a youngster. And I could sit here and tell you so many stories of things that I learned from my old man. It's untrue. And yeah, he was always there. So it seemed quite apt. Once I had my own kids, I could begin to see what other people, saw in that.
Yeah, and I mean, I was talking about having this conversation with you the other day with my dad, and we're talking about that moment and everything, and actually saying, kind of putting a modern spin on it of going, there's no way that moment could take place now.
No,
because of security and everything like that. Literally, and I think
the closest. Sorry to interrupt. The closest you'd get is what happened a couple of seasons ago with the Brownlee brothers. They were both running in a race, and one helped the other over the line.
Yeah,
because you're right. It wouldn't happen again now. You'd unfortunately, if a parent tried to do that, they'd get shot or tasered.
They'd be down on the ground and out.
Absolutely, So it wouldn't happen again. And but I dare say, if it had happened at the last Olympics, it still wouldn't have stopped my old man trying. And knowing the determination of my old man, he still would have got on the track in one way, shape, or form. Because those
dragging people with him.
Absolutely, because those security guards were armed as well, some of them. So back there, so he still managed to, But yeah, now you're right. Things have changed, and it wouldn't have happened.
So you mentioned about physically fit and mentally fit. I mean, mental health in sports these days is quite a hot topic. Mental health in general is quite a hot topic. How did you kind of deal with that kind of back then? Because I can imagine it probably wasn't something that was openly talked about or anything like that. So,
yeah, not as much. You're right. It wasn't. Having said that, you're right in one respect, but you're wrong in another respect, because I and a number of other athletes, I don't know in other sports, I had a sports psychologist.
Okay.
So I did have a sports psychologist, an Australian guy. I don't hold that against him now. I take the mick out of it. A guy called Brian Miller, and he worked with some of the Olympic team, but he worked with me personally. And in fact, it was Roger Black that introduced me to him. And he'd done some work with Roger Black and done some work with Steve Backley. He was a good guy. And he was that person that you were able to kind of, again, another shoulder to lean on and talk to things about. And it wasn't that without him I wouldn't have succeeded, but it was great to have him as part of my team and call upon him as and when I needed it, or more importantly, as and when one of my other coaches could see I needed it. And that was that was the more of the important thing. But I also had on my side someone who we've spoken about that was a real positive impact on my athletics life, as he has been on my life, and that was my old man. Now, my old man's story really is a bit of a rags to riches story anyway, because he came from a broken home in the West Indies, came over to England when he was a young teenage lad and made something of himself. He laughed and joked once when he first saw a Rolls Royce. Didn't know what it was. He was in a van with a load of people. It was the day he arrived over from Trinidad, and there was picked up in a rusty old van with a load of other Trinidadians and some family members, and they were driven to Leytonstone where he was going to stay. And he saw this Rolls Royce pull up alongside this van when they were driving from Southampton to London. And he's gone, "Wow, what's that?" And I said, what's that car? And they said, "It's a Rolls Royce, son." And he's about 15 at the time. And so my old man went, "Wow, look at that. When I'm older, I'm going to have me one of them." And everyone just started laughing in the van and saying, "Oh, yeah, whatever, son, there for the rich and famous. You just keep your head down. Maybe one day when you're older, you'll earn enough to buy yourself a little jalopy, a little runaround. Fast forward, God knows how many years, my old man was driving around in his own Bentley with his own private plate on it. And on the front of the bottom of his number had ambition achieved. And on the back, it said through hard work and dedication. So
awesome.
I was really fortunate to have somebody behind me who had that drive anyway. So it was very easy for me to sort of gain that same kind of drive. It rubbed off on me. My old man was always someone that would say what he thought, good, bad, or indifferent. So I was very fortunate. So from going back to your question, from a mental health point of view, I was lucky to have some good people around me. And it's one of the things that I would say to people now, try and surround yourself with some good, positive people, that can help you. And I've seen a poster that says, if you want to drive a Lamborghini, don't take the advice of someone driving a Fiesta.
So true, isn't it? Yeah.
Nothing wrong with a Fiesta, just in case anybody's listening to it.
No, of course not. I think we've all had one at some stage.
Yeah, but it's my first ever car. I loved it. Stereo system ended up being worth more than what the car was, but that's another story. But it is a case of surrounding yourself with people that can give you good, positive advice and help propel you forward rather than drag you backwards. And I was fortunate that I had that with my dad, and later on with some good people, some coaches, and my sports psychologist. So I became a very mentally strong person, and I still am. And a lot of what I teach and advocate now is all what I've learned from sport, and half of it comes from what I learned from my old man, who literally came, went through a rags to riches kind of story, in his own right. So it may not have been in the sporting arena, but he's been through some troubled and challenging times himself, from a young boy living in Trinidad to when he was lording around in his Bentley, being the king of the world, so to speak.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, we'll come on into it in a minute, because I always ask at the end of each show for your 3 tips. So we'll come on to that in a second. But just before we do, what are you up to now? Because I know you're a motivational speaker, and it sounds like you're still a very, very busy person, boxing and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, work-wise, yeah. So I've been a motivational speaker and a business performance coach, personal one-to-one coach now for 20 odd years. Certainly on the speaking side. The other stuff not quite as long, but the speaking side, I've been speaking 20 odd years. Personal coach, the business performance coach about 8 years, and the personal coach a couple of years. And really, I'm trying to take what I've learned from the world of sport and overlay that into people's personal or business lives. And there's so much that you can learn from, from sportsmen, from sports people. So that's the main thing. Obviously, a lot of it now is online. I used to have the great job of traveling the world, sharing my stories all over the world. At the moment now, I just walk out of the house, turn right at the conservatory, and here I am in my office, doing my bit. But so I'm still doing that. Most of it is online. I've just written 10 new presentations. So I kind of package everything up. I have a program that I call the Olympic Mindset Program. So it's all trying to create that Olympic mindset. Trying to create the mindset of an Olympian. And it's a nice way of wrapping the whole thing into under one umbrella, if you like. So that's great. That's kind of keeping me busy. And I love sharing and helping others. I really do enjoy sort of helping people come up with little things. And it's not rocket science, but it's just things that people are like, wow, I didn't think of it from that point of view. And, as I found in sport, the ability was there. The real ability came from people around me bringing that ability out, and me being able to display and use it when it mattered. And I think that's what I try and do with people, whether it be an individual, a department, or an organization. You you take it as read that organization has employed the right people in their organization. So the ability is there. It's just now a case of how we can get this out of them to perform when it really matters, as you have to in an Olympic final. You don't get a second chance. You can't rewind and go, oh, well, I'll come back tomorrow. You can come back 4 years' time if you're lucky, if you're in shape, and if everything works. So you don't get a second chance. And it's just trying to help people understand that and say, look, it's a mindset thing. It really does. A lot of it comes down to your mind, and it's possibly the most difficult muscle in your body to actually train. But once you get that right, it is the easiest to maintain. I honestly believe so. Training it can be quite difficult in some cases, but maintaining it once it's kind of where you want to is the easier of the two. So that's pretty much what I'm up to. I love it, and I will continue to do that as long as I have breath in my body.
We'll put a link to your website and everything in the description for the show. And there's a few, you've alluded to it a few times about it's the team around you, whether it's the support of your dad and your family or your coaches. And I must admit, that's one thing that I've always, when I first got into the world of business, once I served my time in retail like everybody, people were talking about business coach and coaches and things like that. And I thought, what? Why would you get a business coach? And actually, it was the total wrong mentality, because when you do look at sports, there are so many people around that one athlete, whatever form of sport it is. I had Jack Shaw, an up and coming UFC fighter, on a previous show, and he said, I've got a boxing coach, a jiu-jitsu coach, a fitness coach, a this, and my old man, and all that kind of stuff. And you're thinking, it's just one person in the ring.
Absolutely.
But actually, it's like the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And actually, it takes a team to get someone in that peak condition to compete. And it is so important, whether it is in sport or business, that you get that backing of those people.
I had 11 people, including me. I had 12 in my team. So I had 11 people. I didn't call upon all 11 every day.
Of course.
But they were all there. They were a part of my team, and they all played their part, no matter how big or small, in the development and the success of Derek Redmond, the athlete. And they were there. Again, I can go on about it for hours, but it's quite a long story. But even your partner, and when I was younger, my girlfriend at the time, and that changed quite often, in some cases, more often than my underwear, but like it or not, that person is also a part of your team, because they can have an effect on your mental approach, on your attitude, on your mood. And, they kind of had to understand that this wasn't just a little bit of fun that I did 2 days a week. This was a vocation. This was something that was, was quite serious to me. And as the years went on, it wasn't the reason that, girlfriends change, young lad girlfriends change as it doesn't. But there were a number that it didn't work out because they didn't understand. And, I had many a time the question, you're training too much, you're spending too much time with all your friends, you got to make a choice out of me or your athletics. By then, it wasn't even and that's not me being cruel or, but they were a part of that team. So you're right, it takes a whole team. I worked with he's still a great guy. He sold his business for a hell of a lot of money and now lives in the Bahamas. But he once said to me when I was working with him at a company that he owned, he was even then very, very successful. And he said, Derek, my success isn't down to me. He says, my biggest knack is I don't know everything about this business, but I know how to get the right people that do know about this business, and my job is to manage those people. If I can do that, I'll be successful. And that's how we used to look at it. I'll never forget that.
And that's brilliant. So that kind of smoothly brings us on to the final thing then. I always ask people for their 3 tips. So I'm going to put you on the spot now for your 3 tips that you would give to people in business or even in life, really, because again, everything kind of combines. for success and kind
Yeah.
of getting through things.
Okay, so the three things are pretty straightforward to me. And what's order to? Okay, so the first thing that I would say, which not a lot of people talk about, but it's really important, and that is one of having patience. A lot of people want everything yesterday. We all do. I mean, let's face it. We live in a world now. If you want to know something, you pick up a phone, you Google it, and you want to watch something, you can watch it instantly. But in business, certainly in sport, you got to have patience. It's not going to happen after the first day. You've got to put your time in. You've got to put that graft in, that effort, and you've got to be patient and have a bit of a plan, but try and stick to that plan and be very patient. So patience is underrated. Now, I'm not a particular patient person with things. I'm not. My wife will, if she was standing here, she'd be nodding so bloody fiercely at me. But I've learned that I have to be patient, and I did in my sport. When you're injured, it's so easy to try and make a comeback too quickly and not listen to the doctors and experts and everybody. And I had to do that, and that's one of the reasons I broke down so much, because I didn't listen to the people. And that brings me nicely on to the second part, which I've kind of said, is by surrounding yourself with some really good people and listen to what they've got to say. So important. We all think we know it all. I mean, I look at my kids, they're all grown up now. I've got four, brilliant kids, and the youngest is 22. But when they were young, they thought they knew it all. Wow, what does dad know? He's never been through that. I can even remember one of my daughters, and she would hate me saying this. She did a bit of running herself, and she decided to run a 400, and I phoned her up because I couldn't go and see her race. And I went, "Hey, Grace, how was that 400? She goes, "Dad, you will never know how I felt at the end of that 400. You'll never understand how tired I was." And then she went, oh yeah, actually, maybe you will. So, kids, do think they go for a stage where they think they know it all, and you can't learn anything. And we all go through it. I went through it. You went through it. Your kids are possibly going through it, and their kids will go through it. And it's just one of those things. But I got asked once if I could go back and speak to a younger me, what would be what things I would tell him. It's the same things that I'm saying now. Yeah. Listen to those people. I could have saved so much time, effort, anguish, and made so much more money if I'd listened to these people many, many moons ago. Seriously. I mean, it's just, but I didn't want to hear it at the time because it was boring. It's not, it wasn't exciting. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't, but those things that can make a massive difference to you. And when I speak to young people, I say, let me give you an example. And I always say, who do you think the greatest athlete in the world is? And they go, oh, Usain Bolt. And I go, okay, Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt is the fastest man in the world over 100 meters, 9.58 seconds. But guess what? He's coached by a middle-aged overweight man. So even at his best, he's got a middle-aged overweight man telling him how he can be better. Now, if he took your attitude, he'd say to him, get off. What do you know? I'm the best in the world. I already know. But he doesn't. So if it's good enough for Usain Bolt, the fastest man and greatest athlete, arguably in the world, to live, to listen to other people, then maybe you could kind of do the same. So that's two things. And the third one for me, which kind of, I guess, revolves around Barcelona, and it's a very simple request. Just get up one more time than you've been knocked down. Simple as. That's it. Just get up one more time than you've been knocked down, and you'll end up with whatever success you're working towards.
What a tip to finish on. It's so poignant because we all get knocked down, or we all fall down at some stage, but actually it's getting up that one extra time could be the difference between achieving what you want to and failure. Absolutely. And actually, and not only failure, but that regret, like you said about Barcelona, that if you hadn't have finished, that would have hung over you even more than the injury.
Correct.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Derek, I mean, we could have probably, I say this to everyone because I just find it all the stories so fascinating. I mean, we could probably fill another episode at least. And you know what? I probably will call you back for another episode when we do series 2. But it's been such a fantastic time talking to you and hearing your experiences and actually those 3 tips the patience, surround yourself with good people, and actually, I've forgotten the last one now. It was in my head. Getting up one more time. See, I failed and I continued. It's all part of the plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just so fantastic and so important. Certainly probably more so now than ever, where we all need to band together and help each other out and get up one more time. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great. As I said, we'll put the link to your website in the description, so people can have a look at your what you're doing and your presentations and programs and stuff. But thanks again. Thanks everyone for watching, and make sure you do subscribe to the channel.
Thanks very much.